welcome back to another session. And with us, we have Dr. Deb Matthews. Thank you so much, Dr. Deb Matthews, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, we are going to talk about something that I know I hear about this from so many people. And I know I've had a struggle with this myself, and it's having low sex drive. So, first of all, how did you get into this line of work and what is it that you do?
So I am a medical doctor, and I specialize in hormone health for women and men. And I started off my career as a regular doctor, but I was having my own issues. I was tired all the time. I was so exhausted. Napping was my most favorite thing. And I was irritable. I found myself shrieking at my kids over every little thing. And then I felt so guilty for being the world's most horrible mom. And my poor husband just didn't know what to do with me. I was moody, and he actually took to calling me in the car on the way home from work because he could tell by the tone of my voice whether it was safe to come home that day or whether he needed to put a suit of armor on before he came in the door. And the thing is, I knew that how I was feeling was not normal, but it was so confusing because nothing in my medical history helped me understand, or nothing in my medical training helped me understand what was going wrong. And what really changed everything for me is one day I read a book about women's hormones. It was written by Suzanne Summers. And I really didn't want to read the book because, as medical doctors, we don't want to get our information from celebrities, especially like we remember Chrissy Snow from Three's Company and the Thigh Master. But I had nowhere else to turn. So I read the book, and that book totally has changed my life, because when I read the stories of women in the book who felt just like me, and then how much better they felt once they got their hormones back in balance, that really allowed me to open my mind. And I learned that there were all sorts of things that I didn't learn at medical school, that there was real science behind this idea of hormone health. And I retrained, and I was able to get my hormones back in balance. And I got my energy back. My kids got their mom back. My husband got his wife back, and I got my life back. But I couldn't go back to just writing prescriptions all day long, which is what I used to do, because it just didn't make any sense to me. So for the last 15 years, I've been helping men and women get their hormones back in balance and helping them to get well so that they can get off prescription drugs and love the way they feel.
That's great work. And that is amazing. What have you seen, I guess, in your population or with your experience? What has been, I guess, the biggest issue or maybe the biggest kind of like root cause to low sex drive?
You know, I actually want to talk about the 5 most common things
Yes.
the 6, I'm going to say 6 most common things that I see, because, just like if somebody has a headache, you can have a headache because it's a migraine. You can have a headache because it's sinus problems or tension headache from, crouching over the computer. But you have to know the why behind it in order to be able to address it. And what I find with libido is, there are actually a couple of medications out on the market now marketed for low libido for women. One of them in particular has a really bad side effect of causing nausea. And in fact, about 15% of women who take the medicine have to take anti-nausea medicine. So that doesn't really sound like the most effective, and it only works a little bit. So, but if we can understand the why behind why the sex drive is so low, then we can address the right thing. So the first cause of low libido that I see a lot, especially in women who are young. It can be at any age, but in younger women, this is one of the things that I see a lot, and that is the use of antidepressant medication. There are a number of antidepressant medications. There's a whole class in particular called SSRIs, and that includes things like Prozac and Celexa, but there's a whole bunch of them. And when women are on these medications, one of the side effects that's very well known is low sex drive. But when you're depressed, you can actually have low libido from depression anyway. And I find that this is not something that's discussed when women are being prescribed these antidepressant medications. And so they don't know that there's a connection there. And when women go on antidepressants, often once they feel better, they stay on them sort of for a long time, sometimes forever, without making the connection that this may be part of the underlying problem. So that's one of the things that we can do hormone testing, we can do all kinds of things. But if you're on a medication that's really killing your sex drive, unless we can change the medication, we don't have much hope of making things very much better. There are different medications that have less of an impact on libido. There are other things we can do to help your mood so that you don't need an antidepressant. But that's a really important thing. So if you're listening and you're on an antidepressant, then going in to talk to your doctor about whether that's one of the kinds of antidepressants that could be playing a role, and is there something different that could be tried, would be something that I think is important. A second kind of medication that is a really common cause of low libido, including in women who are young, 20s and on up, is the use of birth control pills. And again, when women are given birth control pills, I don't believe that women are getting told that one of the really common side effects is low libido. But what happens is when you swallow that birth control pill, it impacts our liver. Our liver makes more of a binding protein that grabs hold of testosterone and inactivates testosterone. And testosterone is really important for thinking about sex, caring about sex, becoming aroused. And so when birth control pill kind of knocks down the effect of testosterone, it can cause low libido. So I have had young women come into my practice. I can think of one in particular. She was maybe about 23 years old. She had just gotten married. And now that she's married, this is something that was really important. And she really had no interest in sex. It was really causing a lot of problems. They're newlyweds, and, her husband was really disappointed and she felt bad. And, when we aren't interested in our partners, it kind of hurts their feelings. And so this is a bigger problem than just, what we ourselves experience. But once we took her off birth control pills and that's the first thing that we did. We just said, why don't you come off the birth control pills, try something else? There's other forms of birth control that you can try and see how you feel. And that completely eliminated the problem. And that's all that she needed to do. So birth control pills are another really common cause of low libido that I see in women, even in women that are quite young. So those are the first two. The next one is low testosterone. And of course, as we said, testosterone is the one that helps us, think about sex, care about sex. It's really important for arousal. It's really important for vaginal lubrication. It's really important for having an orgasm. And if testosterone levels are low, it really negatively impacts our interest in sex. So especially desire. And I see low testosterone in women very, very commonly. So being on birth control pills could be one cause, but there are many other causes of low testosterone. Chronic stress is a cause of low testosterone. Age. So as women are getting into the kind of perimenopausal age, so over the age of 35 and especially on into their 40s, menopause. So especially women who've had to have a hysterectomy and their ovaries have been removed. 50% of testosterone comes from our ovaries and 50% comes from our adrenal glands that make our stress hormones. So if you have your ovaries removed, 50% went right out the window right there. So when testosterone levels are low, that's another really important cause of low libido. You want me to keep going? I'm going to just keep going if you're okay.
I love it. I'm taking notes here.
Okay. I got a few more. So the next one I want to talk about is stress. When we are stressed, our body makes more cortisol, which is our stress hormone. It goes up to help us cope with stress. So in the short term, that's a good thing. But when we have chronic stress day in and day out, our cortisol levels can become chronically elevated. And the problem here is when your body knows that there's chronic stress going on, that's not the time for procreation. In your body's wisdom, it sort of knows. And a lot of your other hormones get shut down. And testosterone is one of the ones that can commonly be affected. But it's not the only one. So some of the other hormones that we're going to talk about get shut down too. So when we are stressed, stress is chronically stressed. That's another really common cause of low libido. And as we kind of wind around to the end here, I'd like to talk about some of the things that we can do to try to help counteract this. But stress and problems with cortisol levels is a really important cause of low libido for women.
Yeah.
I got two more. So the next one is menopause. And of course, really, we enter into this perimenopausal time frame after around about our mid-30s, and then really in our 40s. And then the average age of menopause is about age 52 or so, but it can be later. So this whole kind of transition in our lives affects our hormone levels. And especially as women are going through perimenopause and menopause, it impacts vaginal lubrication. It impacts how we feel about ourselves. It impacts our weight. And then we don't feel so good about ourselves. We're less interested in sex. There's so many ways that these different hormones affect our brain, our body, our energy, that all impact our libido. And especially as we kind of are out the other end of menopause, then a lot of women complain about vaginal dryness. Sex can become painful. It's not a pleasant experience. So of course, you're not going to be interested if it's uncomfortable. But balancing out our hormones can actually make a difference and prevent these things. And it's not necessary to go through all of that. And one more that I want to talk about is something that might be a little bit surprising, but that's low thyroid. When our thyroid hormone is not functioning properly, low libido is actually a really common symptom. And thyroid hormone impacts so many different parts of us. It impacts our energy. It impacts our ability to keep warm. It impacts our brain and our mood and our memory and our skin, hair, nails, all sorts of things. But it is very common for women who are hypothyroid, low thyroid, to have low libido. And if that's not ever looked for, it's another one of those things that, there's nothing else we can do to fix it unless we get your thyroid back online and get your thyroid hormones balanced. So as you can see, there's a whole list of things that can be going wrong, and they're not mutually exclusive. Like you can have low thyroid and be on birth control pills and an antidepressant and be really stressed while you're going through menopause. And all of these things pile up. And then, the next thing you know, libido is just completely out of the window. And then it impacts intimacy in our relationships. So then it impacts our relationships. And if our relationships aren't strong, it impacts the rest of the family. And this really ends up being a really big deal.
It's funny because I see a lot of people that come into the office and they just go, "Oh, my sex drive is low. Just give me a hormone that's going to fix everything." But this explains that that's not always the answer,
Yes.
because it could be so many different things. So what are some things that we could be doing to kind of boost the sex drive?
Okay. So assuming that, antidepressants and birth control pills are dealt with, either we work around if you can't, change that, or maybe there's a different option. The next thing that we want to do is we want to try to get your hormones back in balance. And if low libido is really a big deal, you can get your hormones measured. So you can go to a doctor, they can measure your hormone levels. We look at estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. We can also look at one called DHEA, which it comes from your adrenal glands. And that's the one that your body can use to make more testosterone. And your adrenal glands make adrenaline, they make cortisol, they make your stress hormones. So when you're really stressed, all the body's resources go towards making cortisol at the expense of the DHEA. So that one goes down, and then you don't have enough to make the testosterone. And naturally, that one goes down with age as well. So these hormones can all be measured. We can look at your thyroid function too, but it's really important to say that if you go to your regular family doctor, your regular gynecologist, they may measure your FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which is the one that tells them whether your ovaries are still cranking or not. But that doesn't really tell you your estrogen, progesterone, or testosterone levels. And they will typically look at a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And if you're full blown off the deep end hypothyroid, then that one is going to be abnormal and you'll get diagnosed with hypothyroidism. But there are all sorts of gradations in between there that are going to be missed. And so there's a full thyroid panel that should be looked at to look at the different types of thyroid hormones in your bloodstream in order to know if things are okay. And so for a lot of women, it can be really terribly disappointing if they go into their regular doctor to ask for their hormones to be tested because they're told you're too young, or they're told that's not what we do. We don't measure hormones, or, there's lots of, or you think they're measuring your hormones and they only order, the couple of ones that aren't very helpful or that aren't helpful enough, or they maybe order a few more things, but you're just told that you're normal, which is like super duper frustrating. So all of these things can be done, but sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to find the right practitioner to help really do a comprehensive hormone evaluation. There are, however, things that we can be doing on our own. So one of the really helpful things is to do some things to help reduce stress. And as we have talked about before, that's not always so easy, right? It's, easy to say it. But one of my biggest tips about reducing stress is that it's really not how much stress you have that's the most important thing. It's how you allow the stress to affect you. So if you are somebody who's a worrier and you always worry about the worst case scenario, or you ruminate, worrying about things over and over again, you're taking that stressful situation and you're making everything worse. If you are able to be an optimist, if you're one of those glass half full people and you can think about positive things, that actually takes the same amount of stress and lessens the negative impact on your body. So if you can try your best to catch yourself when you're thinking negative thoughts and change your thinking to positive things, that can make a really, really big difference. Another really good tip for helping to reduce stress is gratitude. So if you can stop and think of 3 things that you're grateful for, that can really shift things so that instead of feeling all stressed out, you can really lessen that negative impact. And no matter how stressed out we are, we can always come up with 3 things that we're grateful for. So meditation is a wonderful tool, walking, yoga. There's lots of things that we can do to help balance the stress and reduce the impact that stress is having. That will help to normalize our cortisol level, which can go a long way to help improving libido.
These are some great things. I think there's also this kind of misconception that sex drive is going to be like the movies, like, because we see these images where people are like walking on the beach and next thing you know, they're like rolling around in the waves, which I always think like, where's that sand ending up? But that's a whole other story. So like when you're counseling people about what is even normal libido? So that's, like I actually like maybe we should have even started there because that's sometimes tough because you see on the Cosmo magazine, like, have sex 10 times a day, I mean, like,
Right. Yeah. That's a really hard one because, first of all, it's not something we talk about at garden parties, right? It's like, like what's a normal bowel movement? It's the same kind of thing. We're not chatting about those things generally, but for different people, they have different expectations. So some people will have sex once a week and they feel great and they're perfectly happy and that's wonderful and they think everything is fine. And there's other people that if they're not having sex every day, then they feel like there's something wrong with them because that's what they sort of see. And oftentimes it's a partner mismatch. So if your partner is much more interested in sex than you are, then that's sometimes where the problem is. No matter what the frequency is, it's the fact that one person is much more interested than the other person. What I hear from a lot of women, though, is that they feel like it's very rare for them to be interested in sex. Like they don't think about it, like, at night when they crawl into bed, honestly, they just really want to go to sleep. Suzanne Summers actually talks about it. And she sort of said, like, back in the day before she got her hormones balanced, like really, she'd just rather have a smoothie. And So often, even though the desire isn't really there, once they get going, if they kind of decide they're going to do it anyway, maybe they're going to do it for their partner or whatever it is, once they're able to get started, they're able to become aroused, then, they're able to have an orgasm, like it's okay. So that's sort of one thing where the sexual function is okay. It's just the desire that's not there. And then for other reasons, or for other women, it's, neither one works. They don't have interest. They're not able to get aroused. Like it's a big nothing for them. And it's really, really common. And I think that one of the big things in medicine that we look for is it distressing? I mean, I sometimes have women who come in and they don't really care. Like, they don't think about it. They don't care about it. It's just not important to them anymore. And they don't care. Now, they may have a partner who cares a lot and it's become a problem. But I think it's important to say that what is normal or not normal partly is dependent by you and what you want and what seems right for you and in your relationship. But we are shown an awful lot of things that are not realistic. And that really, I think, makes us feel bad about it. Just like we see the airbrushed supermodels, and then that makes us feel bad about our bodies. And, it's sort of the same idea here that, we're supposed to be always interested or it's not realistic.
I think that's a really good point because, what's in the movies is not real. What we see in magazines is not real. So we shouldn't be interpreting those messages about sex as being real. Because it's funny, like we know that the other stuff in the movies is not real, but there's a good number of us who will interpret like those other messages when we got to kind of compartmentalize that. So this is wonderful. If you had one advice to give to women about libido, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. If it is something that is really bothering you and that, you really feel like something is wrong, especially if you used to have libido that was, okay, and now something has changed. What I would say is that we have a lot of things that we can do to help. So even beyond what we talked about today, there's vaginal rejuvenation procedures that we can do. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can do to help. So it's something that can sometimes be hard to talk about. But the one thing that I would say is if you feel like this really is a problem for you, please speak up, ask for help. Help is available. If you start with your regular family practice doctor or, your regular doctor, they may not really have a satisfying solution for you, which is frustrating, but don't give up because solutions are available. And sometimes you just have to look a little bit harder to find the right person to help you.
Thank you so much. And where can people find out more information about you?
So my office website is signaturewellness.org. And another place that they can look is I have an ebook that we can give away. And the book is called This Is Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Symptoms of Hormone Imbalance. And it's got a lot of quizzes, so you can go and take a quiz. Could you have low testosterone? Could your cortisol be off? Could it be your thyroid? Are you going through menopause? It's got some tips for how you can start getting yourself back in balance. And then really importantly, it has references for places where you can go to look up a practitioner near you and how to talk to your doctor, what to ask for in order to help you get the help that you need.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deb, for being here. Really enjoyed this conversation. And everybody, make sure you do go check out Dr. Deb and stick with us for more episodes of the summit. Thank you.